Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's Brave Cat here once again with another Frontier Signals update. So in regards to the next major update on the website, hopefully that should be coming later tonight. So I'll probably cover that tomorrow and have, a couple X posts or whatever. But I'm looking at the space weather and everything else for today. So we still have the X flare that happened, and we should be seeing that pretty much hit us by tonight going into early tomorrow, so basically April Fools. Okay, looking over at the NOAA, again, they've been underestimating the majority, if not all of the forecasts for the solar storms for the last several years now, especially because, the weakening of the magnetic field. So they used to be completely spot on, but they have pretty much downplayed every single solar event that has happened. And they're calling for a G2/G1 storm here. And I think it's definitely going to pick up a little bit more than that. And then also the other thing, looking down at the aurora forecast here and trying to convert the universal time here. So it seems like what we have at the beginning of this is actually from last night, because it's like the 31st and you subtract hours based on what time zone. So for example, Central Time in the US with daylight savings active, you would subtract 5 hours from the universal time. So like right here where it's freeze framed, this would be basically midnight for Central Time. So that was the 30th. And then so the end of this prediction is going into, I believe, about 7 o'clock Central Time converted. So that's like the end of the forecast. It doesn't actually have a forecast for, the time period that actually matters for this situation. So you'll notice the auroras are looking pretty thin, pretty sparse, not very likely. But this is not even counting what we're going to get hit with. So I think the auroras are going to spike out quite a bit. It's probably not going to go down to Florida, but if it does, well, that should open some eyes. That should be one of those like 100th monkey scenarios, as Ben would put it. But that's not what I've been seeing, especially, going on X, and there's a lot of aurora watchers over on X, and seemingly pretty much none of them even make a single correlation from the auroras to the weakening of the magnetic field, which by this point is documented, is factual. Now, you ask different sources, especially when you ask AI, AI will tell you that we've lost maybe like 5 to 10% of the magnetic field. But then, you look at other sources, especially like more credible ones, and then you see that that number is definitely much higher. And it continues to weaken. We've had multiple accelerations of that. So anyways, with that, we do have this coronal hole front and center. So like right now, it's pretty much looking almost like a perfect rectangle. It's kind of weird. So we are going to see that enhanced solar wind most likely after this coronal mass ejection hits us, which means the coronal hole itself will probably impact us just a little bit more, because the magnetic field is not going to have really any time to recover from this coronal mass ejection, which, by the way, I can't get this endless spiral to load. We can refresh the page, but I don't think it's going to work. I've already done that a couple times. Oh, and then it just magically works. So, okay, well, that's cool. We can take another look at that really quickly here. Luckily, it loads quickly here, so yeah, I don't think this has changed at all. But again, just look how fast this thing is. Like, you don't have to scroll out the entire thing to see it play out like you normally would with a lot of CMEs. This one, it's like bam, it's right on our doorstep, and it just happened. So as it hits us, the solar wind speed is probably going to top out pretty high. So we can easily see that we have not had that occur yet. You know, that's been pretty stable. The BZ has been pretty stable. The phi angle has been pretty stable. There's like a small little bit of turbulence there, so that's definitely going to change most likely. So we'll see what happens. I feel like, you know, just going out into the public and dealing with, you know, my animals, things feel a little crazy. I don't know. It's just something in the air. You know how it is, especially when the weather changes too. But anyways, let's take a look at the earthquakes. So we do have even more events on the Pacific Northwest tremor map here. And I'm starting to really think that we are kind of entering another phase of a watch period for the West Coast in particular. You know, not saying the big one is about to happen, but I think we are entering another period where it's going to be really good to pay attention to this and pretty much watch every move that is happening. So we have a 3.7. It's kind of being blocked by the other rings up in Nevada, kind of the north end. And still a lot of the continued tremor swarms that seem a little bit aggravated compared to normal. And we've also had, so this is looking at pretty much everything roughly since the X flare shot off, so it's more than the last 24 hours. You know, we got the 7.3 there, and we have quite a few different deep events that have happened. And let's see, is there anything else here? There's not really much going on here in Europe. You know, we still have quite a bit of stuff going on around Greece. And then over here, we've also had something go on up here in Kazakhstan. But yeah, not really anything too notable, other than maybe this, you know, this over here, over by the Virgin Islands. Looks like we have a aggravated tremor stack. Well, I would say small earthquake, goes all the way up to the 4 range going on over here. So there's definitely quite a substantial bit of movement happening across this plate. And I haven't seen any more super deep earthquakes happening up here in Alaska. Again, I'm not sure if maybe they just stopped reporting those or if they truly did cease, but it was pretty strange when I saw those, I think about a week ago now. And to kind of round things off here, so looking at the volcano list for today is extremely short, so there's only 3 on here with descriptive events. All 3 of them have some ash plumes coming out of them, so 7,000 foot high blast coming out of Indonesia. And another one out of Indonesia, 15,000 feet high. And Reventador as well, with its continued ongoing ash plume. And so that doesn't mean that there's nothing else happening. It just means that that's all that we have for these descriptive events. So I'm not really sure. I would really like to have another valuable source for volcanic activity. I know there's the Smithsonian, but you know, they have not been very reliable. They do more weekly updates than daily ones. And then of course, you know, anytime there's any sort of government shutdown of any kind, they pretty much, you know, stop doing anything. Even though we're still paying taxes, but you know, those government programs, they just magically go away once they can't figure out the spending over there. But anyways, regardless, that'll pretty much wrap it up for today's update. I didn't see anything really unique on this map that is not shown here. You know, stuff down there shows up. So with that, that'll do it for this update. Hope y'all enjoyed. Like and subscribe for more, and I'll catch you all in the next.